Hi, I'm Ken Lammers. This is Minor League Matters, and today we're going to talk about how I've come to rank the sports since COVID has hit. It's kind of made me realize that there are different ranks in Tier 1, Tier 2, and not so tiered sports in my view. And, well, having said that, let's get cracking. Okay, so we've had the whole COVID lockdown and the masks and all the other silliness and the businesses being shut down and sports being shut down, right? And whether you believe this really accomplished anything or whether you think it's just health theater, one or the other, it did have an effect on us. And one of the effects it's had on me is that my view on sports has become kind of crystallized as to, what sports are in my top tier, what sports are in my second tier, and what sports just kind of ain't making the tiers. So let's start out with Tier 1. Tier 1 has 3 sports in it. First of all is baseball. Second of all is hockey. And third is football. And when I say football, I mean gridiron football, American football, not association football, English football, soccer. I mean football. And let's talk about number 1. Number 1 was baseball. And everything shut down just as baseball was about to start, right? Which ruined my vacation plans, which had included a long baseball trip, watching minor league teams up to probably the St. Paul Saints, and then driving back, watching minor league teams on the way back. But beyond that, it just left everything empty. There was nothing to watch for the summer, right? And nothing on TV, nothing out there. And really was missing baseball pretty hard. And I got to say, God bless the Taiwanese, because they were the first ones that came back, and they opened their league up. The Taiwanese, Chinese Professional Baseball League, CBPL, put it on free on Twitter. They were streaming it for free with English announcers, and they were a godsend, right? And the English announcers were actually Taiwanese, except for one Canadian expat who had watched baseball and understood what was going on in that league and who the players were in that league and how things worked, right? And they really did a good job of announcing it. It took a little bit sometimes to get used to the accents, but the ball play was about AA. Some of the players were a little bit higher, but it was fun to watch, and it was there. The only problem was it was 6 a.m. in the morning on weekdays and 4 in the morning on weekends, right? That was a little bit difficult. And then I discovered Nicaraguan baseball. And Nicaraguan baseball, I started rooting for Costa Caribe, which I found on, I think, Facebook first. But you could find these games on Facebook and YouTube, and they were free. And it was their non-professional league, their amateur league. Good level of play, and pretty even level of play. And it was a lot of fun to watch. They were playing in municipal stadiums mostly, so you didn't see these big empty tombs like you do in most minor league games, most minor league teams in the United States. And they were playing with verve and enjoyment, and they had people in the stands. And it was during the day. I could watch it during the afternoon, and I could watch it in the evenings. Great. That worked out perfect, right? And so I started picking up and watching Nicaraguan baseball. Costa Caribe eventually gets knocked out in their early playoffs. Sorry, guys. By the way, if anybody can find a way for me to get a Costa Caribe hat, the red one, not the green ones, because Costa Caribe sometimes wears green and yellow uniform, sometimes red and white. I like the red hat, although I wouldn't be upset if I could get a jersey, Costa Caribe green and gold jersey. As well, in the Chinese Professional Baseball League, I really would like to get a Fubon Guardians jersey, the dark blue one that has like futuristic lettering, Fubon or Guardians across the chest. You know, can't get any of those things here in the States. Love to get any of them. Okay, so then the American Association opened up in the States. And the American Association is an independent minor league, and about half their teams decided to play. Fargo Moorhead Redhawks, the Sioux Falls Canaries, the Chicago Dogs, the Milwaukee Milkmen, the St. Paul Saints, and the Winnipeg Golden Eyes. Although the Winnipeg had to play at one of the American League's stadiums. And they started up, and I paid the subscription for them too, which was funny because, being an independent minor league in the past, they just were happy if you watched. Now they were like, oh, we can get some money. I don't know how much they got out of it, but they got a little bit. They got at least my money. And I watched that for a while. And then, during all this time, Major League Baseball, which could have stolen March, could have really done something for itself, could have gained a lot of fans and become the hero of the summer, sports for everybody to watch. Instead, ended up quibbling over how many games they were going to play and how much players are going to get paid. So it gets back going, and of course this is the year that my team, the Reds, are supposed to, come out, and they're supposed to be a decent team this year, just like they were last year, and like management and the ownership keeps telling us it's going to happen. They keep swearing it's going to happen. And this year, because it was only going to be a 60-game season, the fact that some of the players were older and the Reds wouldn't be a disadvantage, they'd be able to play and sprint to the end, and yes, we're going to be good this year, and of course, no. It's frustrating being a Reds fan, but I am a Reds fan and will be until that day they put me into a pine coffin, right? But Major League Baseball was back, and all is good in the world again. Yeah, not 100%. It'll all be good in the world again when they're allowed to have fans in the stadium, but that's for future days. So that's number one. Let's talk about number two. Number two is hockey. Hockey was in mid-season when everything shut down, right? Actually, I think they'd gone a little bit past mid-season. They were starting to head towards the final run and to see who was going to make it into the playoffs and everything. And it just got shut down, right? And that was, they went on and on. And are they going to do something? Or are they just going to leave it all behind? Or are they going to have some sort of playoffs? And they decided to have a playoff, right? Well, not exactly a playoff, but when they came back, they did a short round of play-ins, right? Where the teams that were kind of on the cusp, and then they went to their playoffs, which was fine. I mean, basically it's an extended playoff one way or another. My team, the Carolina Hurricanes, got through that first part of it and then went in and got taken out by the Bruins. But what has impressed me and been impressive is that it's been really high quality hockey, right? The sport, generally by the time you get to the playoffs, injuries, people have slowed down, yeah, they put on that burst because they're in the playoffs and heading towards the Stanley Cup. But now, they're playing with fresh legs. They had plenty of time to get past a lot of their injuries. It's just been fun to watch. The first couple rounds were kind of interesting, but guys and gals out there, this has been the last round. They had three playoff series that went seven, and of course the Canucks finally got knocked out as the last Canadian team still in. Canadian teams haven't won since 95, 96, and of course Toronto lost, and we had to put the Toronto fans on that suicide watch and have the suicide hotlines be available, because every year when Toronto loses, you have to do this just because it's Toronto. But the games have been really good. The play has been high level. It's really been worth it. And if you're not watching hockey's playoffs, you really ought to. I mean, it's just been awesome to watch. And that brings us to number 3. Number 3 is football. And I mean American football, gridiron football, not association football, English football, soccer. I mean football. As everybody knows who's followed me here, I really kind of walked away from football for years. I got burnt out on it. It was something that was on TV all the time. Just got to the point I was like, that's enough, right? The thing is that the very fact that it's so big and there are so many football followers has kind of been why I've been so impressed by football, because it's coming back, right? No matter how much COVIDiocy and panic porn's out there, football is coming back. The NFL has announced it's coming back and talked about having people in the stands, right? College football, which is really where the heart of football is in the United States. College football, there's 5 major conferences, right? The Pac-12, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC, right? 5 of them. Well, the Pac-12 declared that it wasn't going to play. Well, nobody really cared, because the Pac-12 is almost irrelevant anymore. It's not really, it's the Big 5 plus 1. They're kind of let in, but they're not really there anymore. And that left the other 4. And then the Big 10 declared it was out, right? A bold move on their part, and I don't think they thought because the Pac-12 didn't get any feedback, I think they thought they weren't going to get any either. And then the SEC, the most important football conference, the one with the most high-ranked teams, said, no, we're playing. And the ACC, the conference with the team that's ranked number 1 in the country, said, no, we're playing. And the Big 12, with Texas et al., Texas, of course, being the football state, said, no, we're playing. And all of a sudden, the Big 10, which had made that decision based upon, not really thinking it through, not realizing how much money they were going to lose, not really looking at the facts and figures having to do with the disease, they just, suddenly they're out there on that limb, all by their lonesome, with several of their own teams very upset with them. Nebraska threatening to go play elsewhere, although they backed off on that, but getting sued in court by Nebraska parents and that sort of thing. Having teams like, Ohio State trying to set up something where they would play, right? The athletic director is basically saying, no, we're not on board for this. And suddenly, and of course, the biggest thing, what may have caused the biggest fuss, was when it came out that the guy who's the commissioner or president or whatever of the Big Ten, that his son is playing in the SEC, I think Mississippi State, and his son's going to play while he's stopping all these other people from playing. The ramifications here are clear. They're going to lose a lot of money, probably lose some money anyway, fair amount of money anyway, with not putting people in the stands, but they're going to lose a lot of money, losing television contracts and all that sort of stuff. They're not going to be a national championship run. They're not going to, a lot of these players and the parents who are trying to set their kids up to make it into the professional league, the NFL, and make some money, are seeing a season disappear, right? All these things just kind of came slamming back into their face, and their arguments have really caused some people that hadn't been looking before to go back and look at the numbers and everything and figure out that their arguments were really kind of weak. And suddenly, the Big Ten looks really bad. But here's the thing. This is why I've been impressed by football. Football is pushing forward, taking steps to do all the health theater stuff right, and they're doing all that, and they're pushing forward, pushing back against COVIDiocy, and football may single-handedly break us out of all this, right? Europe's been coming out of it on their own. They've figured out how things work, but we're still doing a lot of really stupid things here in the States, and football single-handedly may just drive all that out. You go, nope, football's too important. Yeah, if you tell me I have to stay home from work, okay, I can do that. Yeah, if you tell me I have to wear a mask, okay, I can do that. If you tell me this and that conditions, okay, I can do that. You tell me I can't have football? No. And the football people know this, and it's really been kind of amazing watching them kind of steamroll through all the naysayers, all the Karens, all the COVIDiocy, and like I say, football may single-handedly pull us all out of this, and by doing that, it has brought football back in my heart, and I'm going to be watching this year. And I haven't watched really in years now. So football's back in my top tier, guys. So now let's talk about what's in the second tier. Okay, so the second tier are the sports that I've enjoyed and been happy that they've come back. And had some nostalgia and brought me in, right? They haven't grabbed my soul like the first tier has, but they're there, and I'm happy that they're here, right? And so let's start out with the first one on the second tier. The first sport on the second tier has been cricket. Now, anybody who's been following this channel a little bit knows the last couple of years I've really kind of got into the cricket. I like ODIs a lot. T20s are okay. T10s are ridiculous. It's just batting practice. And test matches are just too long. You know, I mean, I get some of the strategy in that's involved in test matches, but I think they're too long, and they're kind of more abound in old-fashioned play. Cricket came back first, I think, over in England. We were seeing Ireland and England play. They were doing T20s and test matches. And then they've switched to Australia is touring England now. They've done test matches, I think, and T20s. I'm hoping for an ODI sometime soon. And of course, you know, the Willow Channel carries the Caribbean League, Caribbean Professional League, and so I've been able to watch that. It's T20. It's, you know, pretty good. Not awesome cricket, but it's good, and I'm getting a solid enjoyment out of watching it too. So cricket has come back. It is something I really enjoy now that it's back, and so again, it's on my second tier, and I'm happy it's here. So let's look at what's number 2 in the second tier. Number 2 in the second tier has been disc golf, right? For those of you who don't know, I really got into disc golf, played it a lot for a few years, for several years, until some issues came up and I really haven't been able to play as much as I used to. It's come back. They've started having their professional disc golf association started having its play again, tournaments and everything, and it's actually been really interesting because the tournaments have been compacted, right? There's only so many of them, and the players are, well, you know, all the good players are playing in the same tournaments now. So you're going to see Ricky Wysocki, Paul McBeth, Eagle McMahon, Kevin Jones, you know, all in the same tournament rather than being scattered all over the world and all over the nation. And as well, they're doing the female, you know, tournaments as well. So you're seeing Paige Pierce go through all these, you know, doing what she does, and it's been really fun to watch. For those of you who don't know what disc golf is, hope to do a video soon about that. But if you want to watch disc golf, you're probably going to be watching that on, you're going to be watching that on YouTube, because that's where it is. Jomez Pro, Disc Golf Guy, PDGA, they're all up there, and I do recommend watching them. And number 3 on the second tier is one that I don't have any equipment for, or any uniforms for, or anything. So you're just going to have to look at my ugly mug. That would be Australian rules football. Australian rules football is something that those of us that are a little bit older in the States have remember back when our first big sports channel came out, ESPN, it couldn't get American sports. It couldn't afford them. So it was buying all these Australian rules football games and putting them on, right? And this was 80s, right? 70s, 80s. So they're playing Australian rules football all the time. And me and my generation were watching it, watching these bunch of madmen run around in a circle, you know, jumping on each other, throwing, kicking, doing everything with balls, trying to kick balls through these, you know, to the stakes, and trying to figure out the rules. Because remember, this is before Wikipedia and stuff. We didn't know what the rules were. We just knew there was a bunch of crazy Australians running around in a circle, and it was fun to watch. And at the end, they would declare a winner. We didn't know why, but we knew they declared a winner. So, you know, eventually ESPN got enough money and contracts with American sports, and they just stopped showing Australian rules football. Well, with the lack of sports going on, suddenly Australian rules football came back. ESPN was carrying it in the morning, and they're actually FS1 is carrying it now. So you can watch it. Generally, though, it is playing at night or early morning. Best if you DVR the thing, right? But it's fun. It's a blast watching them run around and play the game. Nowadays, if you don't know the rules, we do have Wikipedia and places where you can get online and look up the rules on your phone or on your computer and understand what's going on. And it makes a lot more sense now. But, you know, kind of nostalgia hit. I really enjoy watching it. It's not a sport that you see here at all in the States, although there is some sort of association here. It's just not a sport that's played here by many people. But it's fun to watch, and I do recommend it to all of y'all. And so that rounds out my second tier, right? The sports I've enjoyed that now they've come back and that I've seen them, but didn't quite grab my soul like the first tier, but just have been enjoyable to watch. So that leaves us with the third tier. The third tier. These are the sports that just didn't make the cut, right? For one reason or another. And one of these didn't make it, surprisingly, and one of these probably will never make it. So let's talk about the first one of the third tier. The first one of the third tier is soccer. Association football, English football, whatever you want to call it. And this is kind of surprising to me, right? Because I had built up, you know, a thing where I watch soccer and talk about it over the last couple, 3 years. Particularly like watching the National Women's Soccer League and the USL, not so much Major League Soccer and a lot of the European leagues, although I will watch the Premier League every so often. Soccer turned out, you know, when soccer went away, or didn't start up here in the States, because it's a summer sport here in the States, it didn't hurt my heart terribly much, right? But more surprising, when it came back, I didn't even realize it had come back, right? Now, I've got soccer in my Twitter feed. I've got soccer, you know, emails coming in and that, and they just all bounced off. I didn't even realize until like the second or third game that Louisville FC is playing, or FC Louisville, whatever they're calling it, since they won't choose a nickname. But Louisville was playing. I didn't know they were playing, and that's the team I've been rooting for, right? Or, you know, I will go to North Carolina to watch games. It's just, didn't realize they were up and going. And it's kind of a shame. Now, you know, this is not to say that I suddenly realize I've developed a huge hate for soccer. I do see, as a person who didn't grow up loving and watching the game, I see flaws in it that people who grew up with it don't see and won't see. I mean, there are some huge flaws in the game, the way it's scored, the way penalties work, the way that they rank teams, the way they allow ties, or actually most games end up as ties. You know, these are big flaws. But on the field, it's fun to watch. It's a really fun sport on the field to watch being played. But beyond that, it just didn't, nothing happened to tell me, oh, you need to start watching soccer again. And it really hasn't caught back up with me. Maybe next year when we get a regular season, it'll start back up with me. But this year, soccer's a non-entity. It's not that I hate soccer. It's just I realize that it's a meh sport to me, right? soccer has risen to meh level. And, if I've got a slot, I'm on a trip to go watch a bunch of baseball teams or something like that, and I got an extra day and there's soccer that day, yeah, I'll go watch soccer, particularly if it's National Women's Soccer League. But don't expect it to be something I go out of my way for, or to go out of my way to watch. So that's kind of been my epiphany as to soccer, which makes it infinitely better than my number 2 team on the 3rd tier. My number 2 sport on the 3rd tier is basketball, particularly the NBA, right? I'm one of the millions of people who's not watching it and watching their ratings drop through the toilet, right? The political stuff is part of it. I mean, I realize the NBA has become highly politicized, but that's not really the reason I'm not there. When I decided to do this video cast and kind of came up with this list, I sat down with a buddy of mine and tried to figure out where the nearest NBA team is to us. And that's going to be Charlotte, North Carolina. And we think that it's, I guess I could have looked this up on the internet, but I didn't. We think that they're the Hornets now. They started out as the Hornets, then they moved to Louisiana. Another team came in, that became the Bobcats. And the Louisiana team, I think, gave up their name, and the Charlotte team became the Hornets again. We think. Nobody cared enough to look. It's just not a sport anybody cares about. And there's a whole swaths of this country that don't care about NBA. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, so my heart still has room in it for college basketball, even though it's not the same with all the one and dones now, and with it becoming, just more of a run and gun thing with the really short shot clocks, way too short shot clocks, so that plays can't develop like they used to be able to. It's not it's not as good a sport as it was, but still there's something in my heart for it, as opposed to the NBA where there's nothing, right? And a lot of folks I know are at that point, there's nothing. And the NBA isn't helping itself with all this political garbage they've been getting into. So while soccer is meh, NBA is no. And that's it for this blog. Hope you enjoyed some of it. I expect interesting comments down below. Subscribe if you like it. Hit the bell so that you get when I put things up, because I don't put things up every day. I'm not making a living off this. I have to make a living doing something else. And, my boss who pays me actually expects me to do things. I can only do this when I have some spare time and want to do something fun. If you want to contact me directly, at LammersK on Twitter, at LAMMERSK. And beyond that, folks, I'll say what I always say. Go find some sports and watch them. Bring your kids, have some fun. And if you can't watch them in person, at least now they're on TV. Ma salama, y'all.